Hello, everyone. You are listening to episode 4 of Hot Blooded. I'm your host, Kat Jones, and this is my podcast where I talk to musicians about love, rock and roll, and any other off-the-wall topics that come up along the way. I am recording this in my bedroom in Brooklyn, New York, and am 5 weeks into quarantine. I think I've lost count. Some days are better than others, but overall, I think weirdly I might be adjusting, and I can't tell if that's a good or bad thing because it's going to be weird as hell being around humans again if I become totally complacent, never leaving my home. But anyway, I hope that you are all doing okay and finding reasons to smile as often as possible in this very bizarre time. Anyway, moving on. This week's guest is Danny Kiranos, who is the sole singer-songwriter / guitarist / banjo player of the murder folk project Amigo The Devil. And he is someone whose music has profoundly moved me since the first time I saw him play years ago in Tucson, Arizona at this metal festival called Southwest Terror Fest. A little backstory. Southwest Terror Fest was this 3-day event that used to happen in multiple venues across Tucson every October, right before Halloween, when the desert weather was warm but not stiflingly hot like it is in the summer. And it was super fun, and despite being a broke writer for all of my 20s, I scraped together enough cash to go in 2014, 2015, and 2016, but I think 2015 was my favorite year. That year was a very doom metal focused year with bands like Sleep and Bong Ripper and Acid King on the lineup. And because of the amount of slow, doomy bands playing and the fact that it was in its 4th year, the organizers cheekily called it Southwest Terror Fest Volume 4, which was a nod to the Black Sabbath record. And the poster featured Tony Iommi wearing a studded jacket in the outline of the state of Arizona. You should Google it. It's a very awesome picture. And on a personal note, I was quite tickled with myself because I somehow managed to convince this wildland firefighter named Guy, who I had a massive crush on at the time, to take leave from work and go on a random spur-of-the-moment adventure and fly from Oregon to Tucson to see metal bands with me all weekend. And we had a preposterously fun time that involved lots of whiskey and illegal fireworks and daytime pool games and desert dive bars, and also probably the biggest bruise I have ever gotten in my entire life across my lower back due to accidentally getting slammed into the wall of Club Congress during Bong Ripper's set, which was worth it because to this day, I think it was one of the greatest and most mesmerizing sets I've ever seen. So I kind of wore it like a trophy. Anyway, on the first night of the festival, at a venue called 191 Tool, one of the heavier bands was playing, maybe in the Company of Serpents, I think. I honestly can't remember. But when they finished playing, Guy and I were walking out to the front to grab a drink, and suddenly there was a crowd forming around this really intense looking dude playing banjo by the merch tables, which seemed incredibly random to me at a metal festival. But it immediately made perfect sense to me as soon as I realized that all of the words that he was singing were these incredibly dark, romantic tales from the perspective of serial killers. Some real, some fictionalized, and he was so charismatic that he was cracking jokes and getting everyone to sing along to these jaunty but totally brutal songs about murder, whether they had ever heard his music or not. Of course, this person was Amigo the Devil. And for the rest of that trip, we were obsessed with him. We found out every single set he was going to play throughout the whole festival, whether it was listed on the official schedule or announced day of through social media or flyers he was handing out at shows. And gosh, we saw him play at a fancy distillery. We saw him play in bathrooms and stairwells and even the backyard of a record store while like 30 metalheads sat cross-legged on the ground. We saw terrifying men with face tattoos staring lovingly up at him while he played. He always made earnest eye contact with every single person in the room while like stomping around in his cowboy boots on top of bars, completely stealing the show from even the biggest headliners of the night. And he would just be up there shouting about love and murder at the top of his lungs, and we would all just be grinning sheepishly at him. Afterwards, we'd go say hello to his amazing girlfriend, Alicia, who was always selling merch from this table that was adorned with a Pogo the Clown bust and human body parts in jars and bones in a suitcase. Like, it was a whole experience. And then we'd go back to our hotel room and look up his albums on Spotify and keep listening to him. We loved him. So it was obvious from that first introduction to him that he was the type of musician who not only deserved to be huge and successful because everyone who watches him loves him, but he was also clearly putting in the work and walking the walk to make it happen. And 5 or so years later, it's obvious that his hard work and talent and pure love of what he's doing has paid off. He routinely sells out many venues as a headliner, but also has opened for huge metal bands like Clutch and Dropkick Murphys and Hatebreed. Despite not being a metal act at all, he's a country or folk artist, depending on how you look at it. And he even recently was going to go on tour with Murder by Death. Actually, they may have played like 1 or 2 shows, but of course it got rescheduled due to COVID-19, but that is going to happen, I think, next year. It's been amazing watching his career. So all that said, while it's wonderful to watch all these amazing things happen to him that are incredibly deserved, the coolest thing about Amigo the Devil, or Danny as a person in general, is watching the evolution of his work. So back then, when I first saw him, he had 3 EPs out, which were called Manimals, Diggers, and Decompositions, which he has since re-released on vinyl and streaming services just as a one record called Volume 1. They were mostly composed of tongue-in-cheek, campy horror type of love songs about or from the perspective of real serial killers. There's a song about Jeffrey Dahmer going to Hollywood to seduce men in bars and murder them. There's a song about Ed Gein crooning passionately to his victims, and fictional stories, some of which he'll mention in this interview. One about a woman taking revenge on an abusive husband, or wishing a long-lost lover's husband would die. Every one of them would get stuck in your head, whether they're beautiful and wistful ballads or like goofy foot stompers. And they all do a great job making light of otherwise awful situations in people. And his 2018 album, which is called Everything Is Fine, which was actually, interesting fact, produced by Ross Robinson, who has worked with Korn and Slipknot and many acts far heavier than Amigo the Devil. This record is deeply personal. The beast at the center of every song is no longer a murderer in history, but rather kind of turning it inward and looking within the self and all of the evil that the self can create, within your own mind and your own actions. Drug dependency, depression, suicidal thoughts, instigation or perpetuation of toxic relationships, dishonesty, cruelty to loved ones. The list goes on. You know the things we're all capable of. But after all of that, the central message is the realization and understanding that you don't have to be that person you always were. And you can learn from your mistakes and you can move forward so you can do a better job loving people. And this empathy for sort of the darker hearts of the world and the message of love in his music has resonated with fans all over the place. There's even a Facebook group called The Fellowship of Amigo the Devil, where fans can look out for each other and talk about anything from his shows to personal things like death of loved ones or even just how their day is going. And because of this, despite being a solo act, he plays by himself, Danny recognizes that Amigo the Devil has taken on a life of its own and therefore has taken to using the term "we are Amigo the Devil" instead of "I'm Amigo the Devil," sort of giving reverence to this growing community all around him and knowing that, we're all in this together. Obviously, Danny is a person that I wanted to talk to about love. Love of all kinds, from finding inspiration and romance in the darkest stories in history, to his relationship with his absolutely amazing partner, Alicia, who tour manages him and makes his project run smoothly all over the world. So I hope you enjoy our chat. Hey.
Hi.
How are you?
Well, I'm glad that we finally got this going. I'm sorry it didn't work in New York, but thanks for being patient with us.
You're probably the busiest person that I know, so I really didn't take it personally that we couldn't make it work in New York.
Yeah.
And also, the night that you were here, it actually worked out kind of nicely for me just to not have anything to do that day, and snowing really hard that day, right? Like it was like a huge
It was
blizzard.
really bad.
How was your show that night? I was so bummed that I missed it.
For you, it was terrible. It was not worth going to.
I doubt that.
It was unreal. It was unreal.
Awesome.
Yeah, it was unreal. That whole tour was really something else. And I think that was the first time that a show in New York, St. Vitus was great. It was really, really fun. But the last show was overwhelming, almost.
How so?
Just how much energy there was. And it was also one of those shows where I want to say the first song, I broke a string and shit just started going terribly so quickly that I had a minor little panic, and then had to kind of I had to pick myself up very, very quickly within one song to be like, don't ruin this, don't mess this up. And everybody was just so unified that night, and it's weird. It was just such a good energy that whole tour. It was awesome.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
It's so crazy because I think all the time about how I used to see you play on top of the bar top, like between bands at Southwest Terror Fest and stuff, or like in stairways with like your merch in a suitcase. And now you're headlining huge venues and having huge bands open for you. How does that feel? That happened in like a matter of just a couple years too.
Very fortunate. I think that we have been given a lot from other people. For example, the bands that have agreed to come out with us, they don't have to say yes, obviously. It's a very, very mutual kind of give and take. I think mostly they give more than they take. and we are very grateful to have the kindness that's been surrounding us through this project. Speaking of the bathroom shows, somebody had Haas just sent me over pictures from the Rialto bathroom, and it's me in the corner with a guitar by a urinal. And like 20 people in there just like, what is going on? And then the next picture was the marquee of the Rialto with our name on it.
Oh my God.
And I was losing my mind. That was just, we've been very fortunate. Everyone's been very kind. So, enjoying it while it's there.
So back when I used to see you playing on bar tops and in Arizona and drawing crowds of people who were there to see bands like Sleep and Neurosis and stuff like that. You're mostly singing about serial killers and creating love songs out of their stories. I was so I was so taken with the way that you have these like really really dark stories, but you create this like beauty out of it and this romance, and it becomes almost hopeful. And tell me a little bit about how you found that romance in such dark places.
I think it's definitely been a progressive, not progressive. There's been an evolution to even the old songs in my mind, where if I sit here and try to remember the emotions I was trying to convey back then, a lot of it had to do with a humanizing element of the terrible. So in my mind, I pictured what's the most extreme version of love that you can have. This amazing feeling that we all strive for in everything we do, because not even just relationships, but love of career, love of just hobbies, self love in general. There has to be an opposite side of it that is still considered love, but what's the bad side of it? And it's that extremity of like, these people do believe it is love. This mindset is love and care, and this extreme jealousy is characterized essentially by, I love you so much, I want you to myself and no one else. And I think initially my goal was, all right, how can we humanize this extreme version of love? And then as the years have gone on and I've played those songs plenty, I've kind of revisited what those songs mean to me now, for example. And I think there is a dangerous side of of what we call or consider love, which is essentially what it really means to love someone, as opposed to be obsessed with someone, as opposed to lust for someone, as opposed to believe that someone else will make you whole through your hardships and your voids and your shortcomings. And it's been kind of hard to put myself back in the initial innocent headspace that I was in before. It was such a simple concept of like, how do we make this sound romantic, even though it's terrible? And it was fun at the time. And now I think it's become something more along the lines of, how do we differentiate between different types of love, between positive and negative aspects of relationships, of emotion and all that, which is definitely way more of the focus in the newer music that I'm writing now, especially. But that's a struggle that I've been having, is what the songs meant to me versus what they mean to me now. And then throughout all of these shows, the 700,000 shows we played in the last year or two or three, I see what it means to other people. Not what the songs mean to other people, but what people take from the stories themselves, perspectives that I didn't really initially see. And I'm very, very grateful that everyone has their own perspective on what the songs mean and on what the stories mean. But you really get to see how a song is a living thing. A song is a very living thing. And I think it grows as people do. And it changes with emotions, and it changes just like a relationship does. It's kind of cool.
Can you give me an example of an experience at a show where someone has given you a perspective on one of your songs that you hadn't thought of before?
So Perfect Wife, I think, is one of the songs that I currently struggle with the most. struggle is a hard word, but I never meant it to be the violent side of the story. I meant it more as in overcoming the hardships of a relationship type situation. And it was just the most extreme version of a struggle in a relationship that I can consider or that I could think of at the time. It's one of the first songs I wrote for this. And I didn't really know, not that I do now, but especially then, I didn't really know how to vocalize what I had inside. Right? So it came out. It's kind of like a campy horror movie if you think about it on the same terms of just very obviously just visual violence in the song and all that. Again, I really didn't have any idea what I was trying to convey other than that overcoming the hardship, kind of the furthest example at that moment of a bad relationship to kind of turn it into some sort of victory, right? And then over the years, I started hearing different people with different perspectives. The one that broke my heart the most was anytime that somebody enjoyed that song for the violence, for the harm, for the abuse aspect of it. And that broke my spirits for a long time because I had not naively, I had not considered that people were going to take it that way. I thought, if you put a song out there, everyone's going to know exactly what you mean.
Right.
And obviously not. But then the other perspective of it is people that would say that it reminded them of these terrible relationships and situations and abusive situations that they had gotten out of successfully. And it reminded them of the aftermath, the safety that they had found after dealing with that. And it was a really hard struggle to decide where I sit on like a song like that. Is it worth the positive outcome of it for a large group of people that enjoy the song if a few people find the negative aspect of it and run with the worst part of the song? And the biggest difference there is everyone's going to take things however they want to. I've learned that now. But
Of course.
the people that did take it as a positive scenario, I don't mean positive as the story of the song positive. I mean the aftermath, the feeling, the all around encompassing ideal of the song is when they attached it to self preservation and they attached it to like, yes, this goes back to yes, I am in love deeply, or so I think so, but it is damaging me, it's harming me, it's not worth keeping around, essentially. And so now what that song means to me is a reminder that just because something feels good when it's good, which is one of the weirdest things that people say as a human, we all get stuck saying it's, yeah, but when it's good, it's really good. That's the definition of good,
Right.
Like, oh, it's always the last place you look. Well, obviously, because if you look after that, you're fucking like you found it. Why would you keep looking?
Right.
It's always going to be the
That's
last
the end of
place
the
you
journey.
look. Yeah. So I've really been enjoying re-exploring the thought process and learning from people as much as, more than I ever thought I would.
So on the new record, Everything Is Fine, you have the sequel to that song called
Yeah.
You're Perfect Too. Was the decision to make a sequel to that song as a result of your feelings about Perfect Wife?
No, I kind of always had the sequel in mind. I just wasn't sure how I was going to present it. I didn't even think it was going to be a reality, but there was something working with Ross, I think, helped me a lot with that song specifically, because the initial thought was, oh, this is pandering to some degree. And that wasn't at all how that song was born. That song was just born out of a general, like, oh, this would be a cool perspective to write a song from. And then with the similarities, I just started sneaking in these little Easter eggs. And then finally I was like, oh, let's just make it part two, essentially, the other side of the story. And that was more of a, actually, you know what? Yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe you're right. I think the way the song ended was definitely an emphasis on this is the part that's important to me. I think that song is like, this is a more precise, it's a little laser pointer of me going, this is the part I care about. And I just I didn't know how to emphasize it before. So it's definitely been cool to have it. I don't play it that much. It's kind of a hard song to play live alone because there's so much going on the record.
Totally. So you don't really play either one of those songs, do you?
Perfect Wife, I still do because it's a really cool feeling when everyone sings together and like you can see it's just joy. Like somehow it's just joy. Realistically, once we put out the new stuff, that's probably going to be one of the first songs to go. That'll probably be one of the first songs that I kind of throw into the archives. Just because there is a lot of negativity in it, obviously. And I think it served its purpose. I think it existed where it needed to. But to some degree, meh. It's also the oldest song I have. So I'll let it rest for a little while and see how it goes.
You're always really good about talking to the audience throughout your entire live performance. And I feel like you're always really good at giving caveats to your songs. Like when I wrote this, my feelings toward it were different, um, or like when I sang this part, I didn't mean it like this. So don't take it like that. So hopefully your truest fans out there who really pay attention to what you're saying understand that all your songs come from a place of love, and violence is not really something that you're trying to evangelize.
I mean, I've struggled with that quite a bit. Not with the world, but with myself. Like, there's so much negativity in the world as it is. And how do you portray these dark scenarios and situations without glorifying the real world aspect of it? And I kind of always go back to horror fiction, horror movies, because there is a tasteful way to do it. And again, I'm not saying that I have found it. I have not reached, the peak of how to convey that, but it's been really awesome to find that darkness in the human nature and find that absolute just morbidity that I enjoy. I like all that stuff. I like morbid things. I like dark stuff, not because it is harmful, but because it's just an interesting part of humanity. It's a very, very dark. I mean, it's a very, very primitive form of emotion. And it's been exciting to kind of turn it on its head to where instead of just saying these bad stories, I've been trying to find a reason for them, which gives me a much greater purpose to writing for myself, not purpose in the world. Just purpose for myself. It's something to focus
keep you
on.
writing about the same theme that to keep on carrying on the theme of Amigo the Devil, I feel like you'd have to keep on convincing yourself that those dark things are worthwhile.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, especially on Everything Is Fine, for me, I had kind of really reached a point where I realized, hey, the darkest thing, the most brutal, the absolute lowest of the low is, how I'm feeling, or how I was feeling at the time. But that fight within ourselves, that fight to accept and love ourselves really is something that people don't see as this monster, but it's a monster. It's this beast, and it's like it's worse than any person out there, and it takes more people than anyone ever has. It's brutal. And again, my purpose there was to try to humanize it because that's the only thing that made sense for myself. It's so easy to go down that rabbit hole, just further and further. And it's been a huge gift is a hard word because that implies something positive, but it's been incredible to connect with a lot of people that kind of realize, this is a big group of us here. So it's like we're not alone. We're not struggling with it alone. Even if we are, there are people out there. And that positivity is kind of what keeps me interested in, hey, let's keep talking about this shit. Because if we stop talking about it, then it just gets suppressed. It goes back to the lie that everything is great, everything is happy, everything is wonderful. And, even in something like love, not everything is great. There's terrible kinds of it. There's very oppressive and very, very abusive types of love. And that's worse than any serial killer.
On the new record, there's also the song "If I'm Crazy," which depicts the story of a really toxic relationship. What was your inspiration for that song?
I was, I don't even remember why it happened, but I went through this little bout of, I was basically thinking about all my past relationships at the time, right? And it's so easy to look back and say, they're insane. Like that person was crazy. That person was just out of their minds. And it's so easy to just brush it off as like, hey, that was a shit relationship that sucked. Until I realized, wait a minute. I know these are good people. I know they are because it's not that every relationship that fails isn't because somebody all of a sudden is Looney Tunes, right?
Right.
Like, what did I do to make those people not make? You can't make anybody do anything. Like, what did I do in that relationship that failed someone? What did I do that didn't allow someone to be their full potential, to be their basically what roadblocks did I put in their way that prevented them from being happy? Like, what was my part in the failure? And the more I thought about it, the more I realized, damn, it was so simple. They're great people. I just wasn't good for them, or they weren't good for me. It doesn't mean that they are broken people. It doesn't mean they're shit people. It just means like it wasn't the pair that needed to happen to benefit each other. We didn't make each other the best version of ourselves. And so I started thinking of being that person and staying in a relationship as that person. And it's very, very selfish. But in that moment, it feels safe because nothing changes. We stay in these bad situations again because we feel like, oh, well, it'll change or it'll get better or I have nowhere else to go or a ton of different reasons. And it was it was cool to get that out, to accept my flaws and my part in what I had previously considered like, oh, that person's just nuts. And I don't feel that way anymore. And through that I learned a lot, like when I was younger, especially, like the whole aspect of like jealousy, for example. Such a weird concept because, and this changes for everyone, obviously, this is just personal, but I realized that I kept thinking of any moment that I was jealous. Right. what a shitty thing to do and feel. Like what a possessive emotion that is. What a strange like God complex idea that is of like, well, if you're not getting all your joy, from me, from this relationship, ah,
Then I'm going to make it
it's
so you don't feel any joy at all.
yeah, it's such a strange concept to hold on to. And I've absolutely had moments where I'm guilty of it. And it just, once I realized that possessive nature of it, I felt so grossed out by it. I was like, this is disgusting. Like, a relationship shouldn't be ownership ever, at any point ever. It's, in my opinion. And so that song was a huge release for me of being like, hey, everyone has this person in them. Just don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
Get it out here. Get it out here at this moment, and just let it go after that. Keep it in a box and burn the box. just like, let this song be the box.
Jealousy is something that everybody on earth experiences, and I think it's a huge sign of growing up when you can realize that it's something coming from within yourself that you have to overcome when you feel that emotion, or that the relationship is just not right for you.
Yeah.
I feel like it takes a lot of looking within yourself and a lot of growing up to realize that. So that's really incredible.
Well, I feel grown up. It was a hard lesson to learn. It's a really, really hard moment to realize that now that I'm on the other side of it, it's such a weird concept. But when you put yourself back into it, all it is basically, at least on my end, what it was that I think it was. I can only assume what I know is real, and it was just all of my insecurities, things that I didn't think I could do for somebody, and saying, well, if I can't, then it's not something you need. Right? That's the subconscious, I'm assuming. But I never thought that like immediately. But
Right.
I'm not sitting there going, you can't have this. In my mind, I feel like that's why I probably felt that jealousy was just, well, if someone else can provide this, or if they can, if not provide, if they can find this elsewhere in a different aspect of their life, then I must not be doing something correctly, or I must not be, saying the right things, or I must not be. And then there's the fear. That's where the possessive nature comes in. The fear of something else in the world, not even a person, just anything else, taking that person from you because they can do what you can't. And that's gross.
Mm-hmm.
In my opinion, that's a gross feeling. That's like with Alicia, for example. I am, if there's something that she's not getting from our relationship, I just want her to be happy. I'm happy for her to, I'm here to help her find any happiness that she wants to have in this world. And I think that that's the first priority for me in relationships moving forward now, like with friendships, with family. It doesn't just have to be romantic.
The more freedom you give someone to be happy, the more they will love you completely freely. And I think that the more naturally somebody wants to gravitate toward you, the less fear there is to begin with.
It's that open policy, like just the concept of honesty, the concept of communication, whether it's career, whether it's food. Like, I feel like there's even a journey, like somebody I was just talking with a friend who wants to stop drinking. They hate it. They are not interested in that anymore. And the biggest struggle that they have is they don't know how it's going to impact the relationship because of how often that activity is involved in their joy, essentially, in their like fun.
That's hard.
And otherwise, I know that their relationship is awesome. I also know that it's hard for me to hear that as a friend because I'm like, man, I really hope that you are able to get the support from your partner that you want, but they won't talk about it. And there's the communication. And I bet if they were just honest and they just talked about it, I'll bet you they could work it out. But there's that weird the fear of losing something that you love and harming yourself in turn because of it. So that took a turn. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I don't mean for everything we talk about to be depressing.
Man, I don't care. This is just my weird little DIY project, so I don't there's no rule that this podcast has to stay on subject. We don't have to stay on track. I mean, I'm part of the reason why I wanted to do this project is because I want to talk to people about love in whatever concept or form that means to them. But I also know that when you talk about love, it brings up so many other things or so many other aspects of a person's personality. And so that's just like the anchor, but we could talk about whatever. It's fine.
I mean, love is fun because it is literally the root of essentially anything that we do when you separate it from romance.
Yeah.
Like, love isn't just partnership and banging people. Like, I personally believe that we have put love in this bubble where it loses all the other meanings of it. And there's so many different types of love that we neglect nowadays because it isn't this this partnership, this romantic involvement. I think that's dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that's where we put a lot of expectations on ourselves as partners, as just as again the God complex thing, where we put so much emphasis on this one kind of love socially that is now what love means, which means once you are in it, you better be all of it. I'm like, geez, it's a lot of pressure, man. I don't know.
Yeah. We expect a person, like one single person, to fulfill every single bit of our happiness and continue to be attractive to us and be like everything in the whole world for the rest of our lives. And that's like a lot of pressure to put on one person. You got to find joy from like a lot of places in the world.
Like, I wish people could use that same energy and that same passion and fire that they have with love towards anything else. The whatever book you're reading, like, love that book. Immerse yourself fully and give that book the passion that you have and let it ignite your imagination and fly away from Earth and live within the love of that story, right?
Yeah.
And that takes a lot of pressure off of other people when you're able to just find love in things that live within yourself. And that's where I'm at. Just trying to remind myself constantly that love lives so many different places. And love doesn't mean that you have to be able to just fuck something. Like, love can be so many different things.
So you talk about jealousy and all this stuff, and it seems like that's a major topic in the song Husband that you often conclude your shows with, which is my personal favorite Amigo the Devil song. It's about wishing that somebody's spouse would die because you miss them and love them so much. So tell me the story behind that song.
So it is as as close to a joke as reality can get. It's based on a real situation, but not a real feeling. So it was definitely more of a. It's someone that I have a really great relationship with. Someone that I have had a very great relationship with for a very long time, and we're kind of beyond that stage where things matter at all. Like it's best friend, but you know, when you know someone so well that nothing really matters anymore,
Yeah.
and it's just kind of a whole different bracket. You're not. It's like you're not dating them. You don't love them like that, but it's more than a friendship, and it's just this exciting, brand new bracket where you'll always love them. You love them to death, but you can never be with them. And that song was written about someone like that as a joke, just as like a little jab, just like um, and it ended up again shifting into a ton of different things, and now it means a lot more to me than it used to. Now I apply it to a lot of things that I have, not even people, just situations and opportunities that I have let go of in the past, or things that I didn't take full advantage of while they were happening, like job stuff and things like that. Just cool opportunities that I never fully took advantage of that are now way, way beyond reach. And it's fun to see how that applies again, just across multiple different aspects. So, sadly enough, the person the song refers to did actually die.
Really?
Yeah. Like years later. But he did die.
Oh my God. How did you
And so
feel?
terrible, terrible. I was like, oh no. And I sat there for a second and I was like, do I sing it? Like, yeah, I'll sing it. And again, it's just a song. It's a song is a song.
Yeah, a tongue-in-cheek song at that.
Yeah, they both knew the song. They both loved the song. It wasn't an actual death wish, but it's just kind of shit timing.
Yeah.
Well, I guess any death is bad timing. Yeah, most deaths are bad timing. So there's that. I don't say that. I don't say that very often.
Well, I'm glad that you gave him a great homage. You'll always think of him when you sing that song.
But that's another example of taking a general concept that most people have felt and trying to apply it to the worst, most extreme situation that I could think of for that feeling. And I think within that extremity, one of the goals is to take away the shock value aspect. Because I think that's what cheapens it song-wise. And that's what I didn't know how to do before, was to put across the same emotions without the shock value, essentially. And I'm learning. I'm just doing the best I can. I don't know everything. I know very little in the long run. So
Same with all of us. No, I think that's really important. It's important to be able to take a really dark situation and make light of it and have everyone in on the same joke.
yeah.
Everyone at your shows singing along, like, I hope your husband dies. No one actually means that. It's important
No.
that we know that. Like, it's important to just sort of ball up that feeling of jealousy or regretfulness or whatever it is that we have inside us, and just like have some catharsis about it and have some dark humor about it.
Yeah, yeah. I'll always love dark humor. I was raised on it. I don't understand too much else, so that's not going
Me too.
anywhere anytime soon. I just I've just been trying to be mindful of it, mindful of what is damaging versus actually funny.
Yeah.
Like what is just shock value versus actually embracing a situation to provide relief from it.
That's a really, really hard line to draw. I feel like a lot of artists struggle with that a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we're all the same. Anyone who writes music is the same. We're all
Sure, exactly the same. You and Garth Brooks, exactly the same.
I nailed it. Got it. I mean, that's why Chris Gaines came out.
That's right. Got to get some frosted tips, though.
Oh my God. See, Garth was just the inspiration, but Chris came down and was like, "I am you. We are together." That's where I live on that. He's like, "Don't hold me too high, Almighty. I am my people."
So tell me about how you and Alicia met.
We knew each other for about a year before dating. And I was just through similar circles, mutual friends in similar circles. And it's weird because we always were great friends. And it wasn't like the tension that a lot of people, they're like, "Oh, I dreamed of this person for a year while I knew them," and like it wasn't like we were just like best friends, like really good friends. And then one day it just made sense. Like it made total sense. And the amount of days that we've spent apart from each other is shocking. It's like 7 in
Wow.
5 years.
Amazing.
4 years. I mean, that's because of touring and like, she does all the hard work on tour. And I just sit around and play music. And it was a huge relief to have someone that I didn't hide anything from ever. I'm a shameful person by nature. I just am. Always have been.
What do you mean by that?
I know that I enjoy life quite a bit. Very excessive in a lot of ways. So there was always a little bit of me that I try to keep to myself. A little bit of that excess that I was like, this one's for you, buddy. You keep that in. And, that always shows up later. That always shows up as resentment or as blame or any type of like, you're keeping me from being myself, when in reality you just never showed it to anybody. And I just kept it from people. So it was always hard to have that little bit. And since we were friends for so long, she already knew everything. She was like that friend that just knew everything. I didn't hide shit from her.
Amazing.
And when we ended up together, it was just, I think, one of the first like real conversations we had. And it was the first time that I'd ever sat down and been like, "Hey, I'm not going to change like these things. Obviously, I'm going to change as life goes on, but like these aspects of my life just aren't going to change." And that was the first time that I had put it all out there. And she's like, "Cool, I know. Like, I know you." And so she's always been very supportive of every part of me, which is cool.
And at what point did you guys decide that you were going to tour together?
To be honest, it was kind of that like honeymoon phase thing. It started as like, just come on tour with me. I don't want to be away from you. And it just never stopped. part of it definitely was a huge help on the relief side of the business end. But it was just nice to have somebody that was like minded, and she's so kind with everyone. Like her patience and kindness are just above and beyond. And I think that we did enhance each other's lives. It didn't feel like we were taking over either or's life. It just ended up being a really nice thing to work on together. And I think we still prefer to be around each other, which is nuts. You know.
It'll be interesting to see where you guys are at in a couple of months of being at home. No, I'm just
Yeah.
kidding. You guys are going to be fine.
Yeah. No, we're really good about giving each other space when we have to, and even near each other. Like we're very, very mindful of giving each other breathing room. And I think that was one of the coolest things about the kind of love that we have found and formed, is that it is completely non-restrictive to either lifestyle. And it really does enhance as opposed to take. It's just, things are just better with her. They're not different. They're just better. Like I don't have to maneuver my life in a way that is different from how I would normally live. It's enhanced by her presence. So, and hopefully vice versa, but she's not here so I won't speak for her, but I know on my side it's enhanced.
I'm sure she would say the same. And I think that sounds like the type of love that everyone on earth searches for. So you guys are incredibly lucky and deserving.
It's been cool. It obviously has its ups and downs. Everything does. There's no like perfect equation. We're all human. Like she'll have like a bad day. I'll have a bad month. Just, but that's okay.
What do you think is a major thing that she's taught you about yourself?
I'm going through all of them. There's quite a few. I think the person that I have finally allowed myself to be is because of her patience and kindness. I think that there's a very real moment where I realized that the aggressiveness, not in violence, but aggressiveness in, I grew up in Miami, which is a very, very fast, aggressive city. And I think that seeing her patience and kindness with the world has given me this perspective on how to just allow things to exist in their own time. Like being impatient with an airline, for example. Even if the person on the other line is being rude, if they're being unhelpful, that used to affect me a lot. Like if I got somebody and they were rude on the phone, I was like, nope, I'm done. This is we're both losing tonight. and and I think learning that really never ever accomplishes anything. That's the immediate example I can think of, but that applied to my entire life has been really exciting, because you start seeing how much kindness there is in the world, and you start realizing most of the time that people are rude or unhelpful or just not willing to cooperate with your idea of what should be happening. Something that I used to take, offensively and personally, like, oh, you are attacking me. Nah, they're just going through something on their own that I don't know about. Whether they have a bad year, or they're, dealing with family, or they're dealing with just general unhappiness in their job. It has nothing to do with me. And me making it worse for them does nothing. Not for me, not for them. I'm just giving them more grief than they need. And I 100% attribute that change in mindset to Alicia.
I bet that evolution in your life has made touring a lot easier.
Oh my God.
I can't imagine how stressful touring would be if you're getting unnecessarily frustrated with people having a bad day all the time.
Yeah. And it's even applied to shows themselves. I mean, people go to shows for different reasons. They have a different purpose. Some people just want to go get drunk with their friends. Some people want to hear music but not be involved with it. Some people are there to completely immerse themselves. And I used to get so down on myself when I'd hear a ton of people talking during the slow songs, for example. And it would just, I'd be livid. And I don't think I ever reacted negatively. Don't quote me on that, but I don't think I ever freaked out. But I always internalized it. And I always asked myself, what am I doing wrong? Why aren't they listening? Which again is a very, very self-important perspective. And after I started calming down with everything else in my life, I kind of realized no, this has nothing to do with you. They're here for their own purpose. They have their own idea of what should be happening, and that's exactly what they should do. There's obviously examples of people being blatantly rude and ruining the show for everyone else. But for the most part, it helped me realize, get your head out of your own ass, dude. Everyone has their own journey, their own reason for being, their own reason for reacting, their own reason for enjoying something that you don't. And it's nice. It's nice because I finally got to see people enjoying their lives as opposed to wondering what I'm doing wrong all the time. No one is that powerful. No one deserves everyone's complete attention at all times. You know what I mean? We're all in it together. Everyone at a show has their part, their reason. And it's made touring so much cooler.
Well, the empathy that you show people at all times is really, really inspiring to me, Danny. But
No.
that's a really hard perspective to keep up every day, and I admire that a lot.
It, to some degree, it becomes habit, I guess, like anything else.
Right.
I still have nights where I freak out on different things, and I'm just having a bad night in general. I'm very self-critical at all times, and that's okay. But it eases the pressure of feeling like I have to be this specific idea that I set for myself when I know that people are more kind and more forgiving than we give credit. And now we're all quarantined in our houses without being.
And now we don't have to show anybody empathy at all. No, I'm just kidding.
No one at all. I'm just going to forget it all. I'm going to go out in a month or two and just be like, what?
I think this is going to teach us some really incredible lessons about empathy and knowing that we're all in a situation together and equally freaking out at the same time. I'm already seeing a lot more positivity on the internet than I have. Maybe not positivity toward the world, but positivity toward each other.
Toward each other is fine, yeah.
Trying to find silver linings.
I think the internet is slowly becoming the joy of every day. People are just hilarious. if anything at all, like if the internet has done one thing for us, it has shown me at least that the world is way funnier than I ever thought.
Yeah.
People are hilarious.
Yeah. The Twitter jokes and the memes coming out of the situation are just amazing. And the fact that everybody on Twitter is being like, listen, everybody's horny.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I'm glad that we're all being honest, and we're just, the fact that our bosses follow us on Twitter is just going out the window. We don't care. It doesn't matter.
No one cares. It's quarantine orgies. Here we go. Just
what was I going to say? I totally just lost my train of thought.
You're just thinking of horny Twitter now.
Man, that's it's really the only place my brain ever is.
Yeah.
Oh, so the song Hell and you've been singing that forever. And you put it on patches, and people get tattoos of it all the time. That song, to me, seems to combine the old Amigo the Devil about serial killers and finding empathy for the bad guy in the story, and also the new Amigo the Devil that's like finding the beauty in the darkness in normal life and the things that people do in relationships and adventures and all that stuff. Why do you think that particular song connects with people so much like it does?
I think there's a very, very blatant honesty about it, especially because it was so Cocaine and Abel was the first song that I'd ever written as pure verbal vomit. I literally just sang it. I didn't sit down and write it. It just it was feelings that I just said. Right. I didn't care about the structure. I didn't care about any of that. Hell and You, which was written before Cocaine, was the closest thing to that I've gotten within a song itself, where you know that moment where you realize how much you genuinely care about someone, want to be with them, hold them, like the moment where you genuinely feel that you want to be just completely overtaken by this human in every aspect of your life, and you want to be surrounded by them at all times, at least in that moment. That moment of brilliance, that spark, all of the lyrics to Hell and You were written during that spark. The moment that you realize you really love somebody, genuinely, truly, and passionately. And that, I think, is one of the songs that I don't even know if I wrote it in terms of sitting down and having an idea. I think I just meant it. And when I started singing it to myself, I mean, the story of the chorus is actually really funny because I had written the verse and it felt good. It felt really good. And I was back in Miami. It's after I'd moved away, but I was back visiting for a little while. And there was a situation I was going through, good one. And I remember I was on my way to meet some friends at a club, actually, not even a bar, like just a silly Miami club. We were all going to meet up again and have a good time, you know. And I remember parking, and I started singing the chorus as I was parking. And I remember getting out of the car. I was like, cool, that's a cool chorus for something. And then I had remembered the verse that I had written earlier in the day. And I was like, oh my God, it fits. It works.
Wow.
So I ended up driving back to where I was staying. And I finished writing it. And then I went out again after. I was late as hell, but I remember I recorded myself playing it just so I wouldn't forget it. And it felt really good. It felt very, very, very real because it explained how I was feeling at the moment. And that's one of the songs when I sing it, I don't really care about the words because I remember the feeling I had while the words were coming out, and it just felt good. I think people catch on to, we all live on some sort of energy vibration, dude. So I think that there are those songs where that energy, that emotion is kind of trapped in a little bubble and frozen in time. So that's one of them for me. I think people feel that.
Yeah. That's really incredible. I love the fact that you went home from a club to finish writing that song, and then you went back to the club. It's like, no, this is far more important right now. I'm not going to remember this later. I think that's so important for creatives to realize, is like when you get that spark and you have that in your head, you got to write it down because you're not going to remember it later.
Yeah, no, not at all. That is love coming through you. I genuinely believe that when you have a moment with a song, whether it's good or bad love, like I think that is a wave, a force that is going through you, and if you ignore it, it'll just pass. It'll be gone. It's the little bit that we are granted as creative beings, and I think that applies to everybody, not just musicians or artists, or I think that applies to everybody. And that's where instinct is hit or miss. And it's up to us to either capture it or let it go.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's okay to let it go and just go like, that was a fleeting, beautiful moment. But if you want it to be captured and you want to give that moment to other people later through your art, then you better write it down right now.
Yeah. Oh, Lord. What a weird thing. Like trying to capture emotions and all that.
Some hippie ass bullshit we're talking about. No, I'm just kidding.
It is. I mean, kind of is. It kind of is. I catch myself in that a lot. I'm like, did you say that? Did you really just say that? All right. Well, let's go fucking bury my head in gravel for an hour and get out.
Bury my head in granola. Well, I think that is about all we have time for.
I'm sorry for rambling as always.
Oh my God, are you kidding me? There are very few people in this world I would like to hear ramble more than you, Danny.
Well, it's always nice speaking with you, and I got to see you right now, so that's a bonus.
Yeah, that's pretty damn cool. Even in quarantine, getting to see your face.
Technology
is really cool. Well, do you have anything you'd like to plug for people? Like, you can tell them where to find your stuff now that you're not on tour.
I mean, online everything is just Amigo the Devil. Facebook.com/Amigo the Devil. Everything is just Amigo the Devil. But I know we just rescheduled some dates of the Murder by Death for July. I hope that we are able to fulfill those. I hope everyone just stay home. Stay home for a while. It's just everyone wants to get back to their normal lives. That's the one thing that I find frustrating, is that everyone wants the same thing. But the longer we don't try to get this under control, the longer it's going to take for everyone to be able to do that. So that's not a plug at all. That's just like, please, I really want to tour. I know everyone wants to go back to work. Everyone wants to go back. Everyone wants the same common goal Like, nobody doesn't want life to continue. So it's hard.
Stay home, wash your hands, and make sure that your boomer parents listen to you and stay home too.
The washing your hands thing, I thought people were doing that anyway.
Me too, man.
Whatever.
I am learning that it's mostly boys in the bathroom not washing their hands. Like, I talk to friends that are like, oh yeah, dudes don't do that. And I'm like, what? Didn't we all go to like the same kindergarten classes where they teach us that when we're like 5 years old? Wash your damn hands.
I just wash my hands anyway. Like, I'm like, oh, these things are dirty, huh? Like, I have a solution for it.
It seems so simple.
But yeah, thanks for having us on this. I really always appreciate talking to you.
Likewise, my friend. This episode of Hot Blooded was written, hosted, and produced by me, Kat Jones. It was edited by Evan Dulaney, and the theme song was written and composed by Jordan Olds. The logo was made by Corey Largent, who goes by Insane Clam Pasta on Instagram, and additional graphics were made by Jonathan Amaya. Special thanks to Alicia Way, James Wright, and Guy Hawkinson. I also want to send out my sincere gratitude from the bottom of my heart to the people who subscribe to the Lover tier on Patreon: Ronnie Rodriguez, Mark Bassett, Rob Menzer, Janet Talenko Davis, and the band Drug Salad. If you love this podcast and want to help me continue to make more episodes, you can subscribe to bonus content and more on Patreon at patreon.com/hotbloodedpodcast. You can also send me donations at any time with the Cash App at hotbloodedpodcast. Be sure to subscribe, like, and share with anyone who loves love and rock and roll as much as we do. I love you all. See you next week.